Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I grew up in northeastern Arizona, right on the edge of the Navajo reservation, in a dry little town where everyone knew each other and silence hung in the air like heat off the asphalt. My grandfather, a proud and weathered man who smelled like tobacco and juniper, raised me after my mom took off and my dad drank himself into a grave. Grandpa was the kind of man who never spoke unless the words mattered. And when he did talk, you listened. He told me a lot of things growing up, most of which I wrote off as desert myths. Never whistle at night, he'd say, staring at the horizon like he saw things I couldn't. Never say their names. And never go past the cliffs after dark. He said it with a voice that'd steel under the gravel, and a look in his eyes like he was watching something move just out of sight. I laughed it off when I was younger, chalked it up to old man superstition. But there are moments in life when everything you thought was nonsense crashes headfirst into truth. For me, that moment came on a cool October night when I was 23. I had just gotten out of a messy breakup, the kind that leaves you sore in places you didn't know could ache. I didn't want to be around people. I needed air. So I grabbed my gear, hopped in my old Chevy, and drove up into the high desert, just past the reservation line, where the canyons cut deep and the red earth swallows sound. There was a place near the edge of a ridge I always liked. Flat ground, big sky. You could see the stars in ways you don't from town, like someone had spilled a bowl of diamonds across black velvet. I set up my tent, started a small fire, and pulled out my leather-bound journal. Writing helped me make sense of the mess in my head. But that night, something felt off. The wind had died. The bugs went quiet. Even the coyotes, who usually howled like they were telling dirty jokes to the moon, had shut up. I shrugged it off at first. Desert weirdness. Happens all the time. Then I felt it. That crawling sensation on the back of your neck, like ice spiders tapping up your spine. The primal part of me, the part that still remembered how to be prey, whispered you're not alone. I looked up, and I saw it. A figure, crouched low at the edge of the ridge. At first, I thought it was a man, maybe a hiker, lost or drunk. But the longer I stared, the more I knew that wasn't right. It was too still. Its limbs were too long, folded wrong like a marionette packed into a box. Its eyes, Jesus, they glowed. Not a reflection, not a trick of the firelight. They glowed yellow like twin embers in a corpse's face. It didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared at me like I was something it had been looking for. I stood up, tried to make my voice firm, even though my throat was suddenly full of sand. Hey, you lost. It tilted its head, slow and jerky, like a puppet whose strings were tangled. Then it rose. I swear to God, it unfolded itself like a shadow, stretching in the sun. Too tall, shoulders too narrow, arms hanging well past the knees. Its skin was pale, stretched too tight over bones that didn't look human. And the face was wrong. It looked like someone had taken a man and stitched a coyote's features into it, but without knowing what a coyote really looked like. Its mouth was too wide, lips pulled tight over yellow teeth like splinters. Its nose twitched. Its ears looked half-formed. The smell hit me then, like rotting meat and wet fur. I couldn't move. My legs just froze. My breath caught in my chest like it didn't want to come out. Then it smiled. God help me, it smiled. And it opened its mouth. My voice came out. Hey, you lost. The exact same tone, same rhythm, same little nervous crack in the middle. It mocked me, word for word. That broke the spell. I ran. I didn't grab my gear. Didn't even put out the fire. I just turned and sprinted to my truck like the devil himself was behind me. Heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own ragged breathing. I fumbled the keys, dropped them, swore, picked them up with shaking hands, and slammed the door shut just as I saw movement at the edge of the trees. It didn't chase me. Didn't need to. I locked the doors and sat there for hours, staring into the dark with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles bled. I couldn't bring myself to turn the headlights on. I was too scared I'd see it again. When morning finally crept over the desert, I forced myself back to the site. Everything was shredded. My tent, ripped in half. My sleeping bag, torn open, stuffing everywhere. My journal, the leather cover clawed through, pages scattered like dead leaves. I picked up what I could, left the rest, and drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Didn't speak. Just watched the road and tried not to cry. When I told my grandfather what happened, he didn't ask questions. Didn't tell me I imagined it. He just nodded, went to his shelf, pulled down a pouch of cedar and sage, and handed it to me. You saw one, he said, and it saw you. Keep this with you, and don't go back. I haven't, and I won't, because some things out there aren't meant to be understood. Some stories are meant to be warnings, and some eyes, once they've locked onto yours in the dark, never really look away. Story 2. Last fall, I spent 3 weeks helping my uncle harvest corn on his farm outside Gallup, New Mexico. I was between jobs, between relationships, and running low on excuses to stay in the city. So when Uncle Ray called and said he could use an extra pair of hands, I figured some quiet out in the fields might do me good. Ray's farm wasn't much, about 40 acres, most of it corn, the rest a mix of fallow fields and dirt roads that stretched into the desert. His place sat just on the edge of the Navajo reservation, close enough that stories floated in with the wind, but far enough that no one ever thought they'd come to life. The first thing I noticed, even before the weird stuff started, was the silence. There's a kind of hush out there at night, like the land is holding its breath. No crickets, no owls, just the wind moving through the dry stalks of corn like whispers from a world that doesn't want to be known. Ray mentioned it on my second night. We were sitting on the porch drinking lukewarm coffee, listening to that dead quiet. You notice the field? He said, his voice low like he was telling a secret. Something's been messing it up. I looked over. The moon was out, washing the corn in silver. I didn't see anything. What do you mean? I asked. He nodded toward the far end of the field, where the rows met the line of juniper trees. Stalks knocked over. Not random either. In spirals. I smirked. Probably teenagers screwing around. He shook his head. No prints. No tire tracks. Just flattened corn. I didn't say anything, but I was thinking deer, maybe even coyotes running through. I didn't want to admit it at the time, but there was a look in Ray's eyes, like whatever he saw out there didn't sit right in his gut. A week went by. I got used to the chores, the dust, the heat, but the silence at night kept nagging at me. It wasn't natural. On the 8th night, something changed. It was around 2 a.m. I was staying in the guest room, the one at the front of the house. The window faced a cornfield. I woke up to a scratching sound, not loud but steady, like claws on glass. Still half asleep, I figured it was a tree branch. Then I remembered there weren't any trees near the house. I sat up, heart already thudding in my chest. The scratching stopped. I waited, listened, then it started again, this time slower, almost deliberate. I got up and walked to the window. I hesitated. Something deep inside me, some animal instinct, said don't look, but I pulled the curtain back anyway. There was a face staring at me through the glass. It was inches away. I didn't even scream at first. I just froze. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. It wasn't human, but it wasn't an animal either. Its skin was gray like old ash, stretched tight over sharp bones. There were patches of fur clinging to its face and neck, like it had once been a coyote, but forgot how to be one. Its eyes were yellow, sunken, dead but watching, and its mouth, God's mouth, too many teeth, long, yellow, jagged things that looked like they had grown wrong inside something that was never meant to smile, but was smiling at me. When I finally found my voice, I screamed so loud I thought my throat would tear. The thing didn't flinch. It just tilted its head, curious, like it was learning how to react. Uncle Ray burst into the room with his old shotgun, eyes wide. He saw my face, not the thing. By the time he got to the window, it was gone. We ran outside. Nothing. But the cornfield, Jesus, it had changed. The rows were crushed in a massive spiral, each turn leading deeper into the stalks, pointing toward the dark woods at the edge of the land. No footprints, no drag marks, just the flattened corn and that same impossible silence. We stood there for a long time, the cold seeping into our bones. Ray didn't say anything. He just stared at the pattern like it had answered a question he'd never dared to ask. The next morning, we walked the field in daylight. That's when we saw the tracks. Hoof prints, but not normal ones. These were long, narrow, and wrong, like hooves that split down the middle and grown fingers. Some prints showed claws, others showed toes. They changed halfway across the field, like the thing walking through had changed too. Ray called one of his Navajo neighbors, an older man named Thomas. He came that afternoon with a bundle of sage and a look on his face that said we didn't want the truth, but we were going to get it anyway. He stood in the middle of the spiral, eyes closed, breathing through his nose. Then he said one word, Skinwalker. I'd heard the stories. Everyone around here had. Witches that could wear the skin of animals. Shapeshifters born from dark magic. But I never believed them. Until that night. Thomas helped us bless the land. We burned sage for hours. He spoke in words I didn't understand, in a voice older than anything I'd ever known. But even with the smoke thick in the air, even with prayers clinging to the wind, I could feel it. It was still out there, watching, waiting. The next few nights were worse. The scratching came back. Not every night, just enough to make me dread the silence. I started hearing breathing outside the window. Once, I swear I heard my name whispered in a voice that sounded like my mother's. But she's been gone 5 years. I stopped sleeping. Ray started sleeping with a shotgun across his lap. Eventually, I left. Told Ray I had to get back to work, to real life. But I haven't been able to shake it. The silence follows me now. Sometimes I hear the scratching, even in my apartment. Sometimes I catch glimpses and reflections, something behind me, moving just out of frame. I haven't gone back to the farm. Ray doesn't call much anymore, but when he does, I can hear it in his voice. He's still not sleeping either, and last week he said something that made my blood run cold. "It's learning," he whispered. "It knows what scares us now. I don't know what we invited that night. I don't know what lives in the corn, wearing 1,000 faces, waiting for the wind to die down. But if you ever hear scratching on your window after midnight, don't look, don't move, and whatever you do, don't let it see your face." Story 3. They say every town has its local legends. Cursed woods, haunted bridges, witches that lived at the edge of a field. Ours had the Hogan, just outside Window Rock, where the rocks turn red like bleeding stone when the sun sets. There's a crumbling Hogan that sits half buried in the earth, like the land itself tried to swallow it up but stopped halfway through. People said it was cursed, haunted, evil. My parents didn't even like saying its name. "You don't go near that place," my dad would say, tapping the steering wheel twice like some weird superstition. Bad things wait there. Old things. Micah and I, we didn't listen. We were 13, at that dumb, stubborn age where fear felt like a challenge and warnings sounded more like dares. Micah was the brave one. He'd dive headfirst into anything, laughing like the world was just a game built for him to beat. I was always the one holding the backpack, checking over my shoulder, second-guessing everything. But that day I followed him, and I wish to God I hadn't. It was late October, one of those dry, wind-bitten days where the sky looks stretched thin and the air smells like dust and static. We waited until dusk because, of course, if you're going to do something stupid, might as well make it as spooky as possible. We left our bikes hidden behind some brush and crept toward the Hogan. It looked like a half-sunken skull, its wooden ribs poking through the collapsed roof, the door leaning like it was too tired to keep watch. The closer we got, the quieter it became, like the air itself was holding its breath. Micah grinned. "Bet you won't go in first." I tried to grin back. "Bet I will." We slipped inside. The air was musty like rotting wood and something else. Something faintly metallic like blood that dried a long time ago. Dust floated in the shafts of fading light, cutting through the broken ceiling. Cobwebs stretched like old veins from beam to beam. Everything creaked with the weight of silence. Micah, being Micah, started goofing off. He picked up a stick and waved it like a wand. "I summoned the ghost of the Hogan," he shouted, doing his stupid dance. "Come and haunt my chicken brother." I laughed, more at his awful dancing than the joke. And then I turned around. Micah was outside. I saw him, clear as day, standing just beyond the entrance, barely visible in the dim light. He had this blank look on his face, like he didn't know where he was. But then I felt it, behind me. I turned back around. Micah was still inside, but something was wrong. The grin on his face was too wide, too sharp. His skin didn't quite sit right on his bones. And his eyes. God, his eyes were pitch black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, no whites. Just endless pits that looked like they led somewhere else. He tilted his head. "Come with me," he whispered, voice rasping like sandpaper. "I know where the others are hiding." I froze. My brain couldn't make sense of it. How was he inside and outside at the same time? Who, or what, was in front of me? The thing stepped closer. That's when the real Micah burst through the doorway and yanked me by the arm so hard I nearly hit the floor. We ran. We didn't stop to look back. I swear I heard something chasing us, scraping against the ground, breathing too hard, too fast. We reached the bikes and pedaled home like demons were on our heels. When we got back, neither of us said a word to our parents. We just stared at each other, pale and shaking, trying to pretend it didn't happen. But it did, and it wasn't over. That night, I woke up to screaming. Micah's bed was soaked in sweat, his eyes wide with terror. It was at the window, he whispered between sobs. It was tapping with its claws. It said I left it behind. I ran to the window, heart hammering, but saw nothing. Just empty darkness pressing against the glass. We moved a week later. My dad got a new job in Albuquerque. My mom never asked why we were packing so suddenly. Maybe she knew. Maybe deep down, they both knew the stories weren't just stories. I didn't hear from it again for a while. Until 3 years later. I was 16, home alone, scrolling through my phone late at night. My parents were out. Micah was at a sleepover. The house was silent. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. No name. Just static on the other end. I was about to hang up when I heard it. "Come get me," the voice whispered. "I'm still in the Hogan." It sounded like Micah, but not quite. Like something trying to sound like him. Like a voice put on like a mask. I hung up and blocked the number. It called again the next night. Then again. Always the same words, the same static. Sometimes, when I walk past a mirror in the dark, I see something that's not quite me. Sometimes, Micah says he dreams of the Hogan, of standing inside, unable to move, while something wears his skin and calls out my name. We don't talk about it anymore, but we both know it's still waiting in the Hogan, waiting for one of us to come back, and it's wearing my brother's face.